Happy Thanksgiving week. We've made it to the end of November, and it's happy and it's sad, right, Mick? Welcome into another episode of Six Rotations. We've got phenomenal volleyball on our plates this week. So much on the line. Did you guys enjoy Championship Sunday and Saturday? There were so many mid-majors, low-major tournaments where teams are fighting for everything. There were some great ones. Northern Kentucky had a huge comeback to win their conference. We'll talk about everything in this episode. We've also got 3 interviews on the back end. This is a mega episode for you here on November 23rd, as we are always brought to you by SNA Sports, better equipment for a better game. And Mick, we've got 3 great ones. We're going from East Coast to West Coast to the Heartland for our setter episode at the end of this conversation about the bubble teams and the auto bids and the at-larges. We start with Savannah Vach, who had an absolutely incredible win for Miami against Florida State this past weekend. We chatted with her just before that FSU match. Then we head out to the Kansas State transfer who calls LA home now in Shelby Martin. She is tied with Washington. Her and her Bruins are tied with Washington atop the Pac-12 before finalizing it with a freshman who is making all the headlines in Lexington, Emma Grome, who has the Wildcats just a few wins away against Florida nonetheless from winning another SEC title. But Nick, there's so many places where we can start this episode. Why don't we do it in the Big Ten, where all the mayhem has continued, right? It didn't finish last weekend. We saw Penn State, Ohio State, Penn State, Nebraska, Wisconsin ended up pulling out a very tight one late at Minnesota. And when all is said and done, there are still 3 teams that all have a pretty solid chance of taking home the Big Ten title.
Well, I don't ever remember a time, Daniel, when conference championships weren't close to being decided with 1 or 2 teams. I mean, Penn State had a chance to win the conference if they could have won both matches this weekend. And they had Nebraska down 22-15. It looked like this was going to go a different direction. And Nebraska comes back. I thought John Cook was going to do a skip going from one bench to the other there between games after they came back and won that set. And Minnesota had Wisconsin, I thought, and yet Wisconsin prevailed.
Those were, how about blowing 8-point leads twice, including a handful of set points there for Wisconsin? You think for sure Minnesota is going to take this away in 4, but no, a 5th is forced. An incredible win for Kelly Sheffield and company. But how about the fact that Russ Rose has now not won in Lincoln since 2014? The last 3 matches all went 5 sets. But this one, no, a 3-setter for Nicklin Hames and Lauren Stivrins and company. There's so much to discuss. Ohio State stays in that top 16, firmly into that, seed conversation with their win over Penn State. They also beat Illinois in a couple weekends ago. And then
they got Penn State 3-0 the next night.
I was about to say they swept Penn State.
Yeah.
So that Big Ten conference, we talked about the standings last week, and we're going to spend less time really breaking down the Power Fives today. Today is all about you, the mid-majors, the low majors. We're going to give our due to all of them, but it's Wisconsin and Nebraska at 15-3. Wisconsin hosting Nebraska on Friday. Holy cow. Cannot wait. Then Nebraska at Purdue. Purdue sits 1 game back, 14-4. Ohio State and Minnesota pretty much out of the championship discussion, with Ohio State and Minnesota both at 13-5. That's the Big Ten. If you want to know how the Big Ten will wrap up, go to last week's episode. We spent a whole lot of time talking about all the matchups for this upcoming weekend, so we can kind of move on from that, Mick. And let's go ahead and take a look at the top 25, because that's what this show does. And before we get too ahead of ourselves, Mick, when you see the top 25, is there anything specifically that jumps out to you? Maybe BYU staying at 4 with Wisconsin at 5, Purdue at 6. Anything crazy over there?
Well, I think the thing to look at with BYU is they are just knocking the cover off the ball. But where BYU has always had trouble in the tournament is with their serve receive. So if they can pass, they probably deserve that 4. But Wisconsin is more tried. And BYU's lost to Pittsburgh. And incidentally, Pittsburgh is playing Louisville this Wednesday.
Yeah, and should be amazing.
I tell you, no matter what it means for the conference, it is going to make a difference in where they're seated on this on this tournament Sunday coming up. And so I the thing that jumps out to me is the coaches finally gave recognition to Mississippi State.
This is huge.
I'm not a big fan of Illinois, so I don't know why Illinois keeps moving up a little bit. When they've had opportunities, they've gotten swept 3-0 almost every time.
Yeah, for the second week in a row, Illinois moves up despite beating a couple, bottom feeders in the Big Ten. But let's give our due, right? We've been Mississippi fans the last few weeks. Maybe didn't give them enough attention midway through the season, but we have both come around. The Bulldogs are now ranked for the first time in program history. Huge congratulations out there to Starkville. I cannot believe that Miami is still not ranked, Mick. I mean, San Diego drops out of the top 25. That makes room for Mississippi State. Miami is still sitting there in the receiving vote section with Tennessee and Marquette. And it's like, oh my goodness, what do they need to do, right? They beat Florida State on the road. And now Miami will just have to carry that massive chip on their shoulder into the tournament where they're likely going to be a top 16 seed. I'll tell you that.
Well, that's right. And the other thing is Western Kentucky won their conference and proved again that they're going to be tough to deal with. That 2-ball in the middle hit.
Yeah, Lauren Matthews against Nicole Lennon was classic. We'll talk about that with all of the other conference tournaments.
Absolutely. So I think maybe Western Kentucky could have been up a little bit higher. It's hard. Penn State got 0-2, got swept this weekend. Western Kentucky maybe deserves that spot in front of Penn State.
Yeah, I will say, unfortunately for Travis Hudson and those Topper fans, they probably won't be hosting like they were last year. They're the 20th in the RPI. Just that strength of schedule crushes them. That the pre-conference schedule wasn't as difficult as maybe some and especially the machines wanted it to be. But that's our top 25. We can kind of get to the good stuff now. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about all of the at-larges in a little bit and all the bubbles. I've gone ahead and made a bit of a bracketology that you can check out fully over on our Twitter at 6 Rotations with the last 4 in, the first 4 out. Still so much to be played. But Mick, and let's start with you, right? You were down in Louisiana calling it remotely, the Sun Belt Championship. And I think you might have thought it was going to be Texas State, but it was a quick one. 3 sets for USA, South Alabama. What did they show you?
Well, Jesse Ortiz, first year coaching, has 4 transfers from Tennessee on that team. And Keeble, the setter, smaller body type, was amazing at threading the back sets, very fast 1-foot takeoffs to Capizzi in the middle for South Alabama. And they surprised. They just steamrolled the whole tournament. They lost 1 set. They got kind of surprised by UTA the first set, but that is as balanced a team as there is out there. They get in the tournament and they will get in the tournament. They could hurt some people in the first round. So
we've got 22 teams already locked in. Let's go through some of them here. Brown out of the Ivy League. They won their conference, no conference tournament in the Ivy League. UMBC wins their 2nd straight American East with a reverse sweep. Get used to hearing that phrase today. There were a ton of reverse sweeps in the championship of the conference. Talk about a swing of emotions. Albany led 2-0, but UMBC, those Retrievers, win the A East. Towson wins their 3rd straight Colonial with the reverse sweep of Elon. Sacred Heart is the maybe the story of the weekend, because I don't know if you guys remember. You might be like, oh, Sacred Heart, I remember that name. They were 10-0 in the spring and were going to the championship of the NEC, the Northeast Conference, before COVID forced them to be removed and forfeited. And they get revenge, come back, win the NEC. BYU is going to represent the WCC as well. And a couple other ones here. Here's the big one. I want to hear you're talking about this, because we've talked a little bit about Northern Colorado. Weber State had a 27-match home winning streak. Yeah. They beat Northern Colorado in the spring to advance to the NCAA tournament, and then Northern Colorado gets revenge on Sunday with a 5-set win. Wow. Tremendous matches, and they're all close, and crowds. The thing was exciting about, didn't matter if it was a Power 5 match or one of these other matches. People turned out in masses. There were fans for both teams at every venue, so it was pretty exciting to watch. You couldn't get enough of it. No, it was awesome. It was, if you have ESPN Plus, like I did, you can just bounce from one to the other, to the other, to the other, and continue to just go down the list. Last night or Sunday night, we're recording this on Monday, there were some fantastic finishes 5 minutes apart. FAMU beat Jackson State, who made it to the NCAA tournament in the spring to represent the SWAC in a 5-setter. Colgate represents the Patriot League to make sure that everyone's teeth are nice and fresh. Howard won their 6th in their last 7 years over Delaware State in a late one at night. And Campbell beat High Point in 5. Yeah. High Point is a team that sits on the bubble there, and a Campbell team that is, it's a little odd, right? You know, what's going on with what you think might be, you know, a bubble team? Do you think High Point might have enough? I don't know.
High Point is definitely on the bubble and maybe one spot off of making it in, but High Point was picked to win that. I picked them to win that. I thought they were very strong. They performed very well in the tournament last year. I believe they beat Central Florida in the tournament, if I'm not mistaken. And I expected them to come roaring back for more. And that upset by Campbell is big. High Point's got to be doing some politicking right now.
We got to get a couple more here. Dayton wins the A-10. That was no surprise. Northern Kentucky had a crazy comeback to continue their dominance in the Horizon League. They were playing UIC. UIC had, I think, 6 match points to see Northern Kentucky come back. And then Northern Kentucky won, but then it got turned around. And then UIC ends up winning. And I had tweeted out from the 6 Rotations account that Northern Kentucky wins the Horizon. They're celebrating it, but nope. Reverse it all. UIC ends up storming away and winning the Horizon, ending Northern Kentucky's reign. Mick, did you end up catching any of that Horizon League final?
I didn't, but I followed Chicago, and that program is on the upswing. They continue to get better, and it seems like it's happened overnight. That's a program to follow, I think, in the future.
It was truly, I have to go through this box score for a little bit for you guys, because I wanted to tease you a bit by saying Northern Kentucky wins the Horizon and then changing it on you, because this 5th set was an anomaly of anomalies. Okay. So UIC takes a 14-8 lead before the Norsemen and the Norsewomen go kill, attack error, 3 blocks in a row, 4 blocks in a row from 14-10 to 14-13. Then a kill from Riley Briggs ties it up. UIC takes a 15-14 lead. UNK took a 16-15 lead. Then the controversy struck when it looked like UNK had won it 17-15. A lift was called after they were celebrating to reverse the decision. And then UIC storms away with 3 straight points. Madness. That one was madness. How about the upsets in the SoCon? 1 and 2 both went down in the first round, Mick, with Furman and the Citadel upsetting and putting together the special. And I'm really happy about this too, because one of my good buddies, Tim Ebeck, is the assistant coach for the Citadel. He was on fire, as was Charlissa De Jesus. 30 kills in the semifinal against Samford and a clean sweep of Wofford in the championship to give the Citadel the SoCon title. The 7 seed, the Citadel, in their first ever championship match, and they sweep Wofford. Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And there's so many of these stories out here. You've picked up on many of them, but what's happening to our sport? It is going nuts and people are excited.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I love championship time, whether it's basketball, volleyball, soccer, college sports in tournament time is addicting because of the emotions that are spent from the players. SEMO wins their 2nd in 3 years over the co-champion Morehead State to represent the OVC. Another 7 seed, Utah State, goes back-to-back, finishing winning the WAC with 8 straight sets won as they swept Grand Canyon in the final. FGCU, for all of you bubble teams, you can take a sigh of relief because FGCU is representing the A-Sun in their first conference championship in 3 years. They were going to be maybe one of those bubble teams we'll talk about in a little bit. Western Kentucky, let's talk about this one. You watch any of the Matthews against Lennon performance? Because Nicole Lennon early on was lights out.
I love both of these teams, and And Lennon has always been a favorite because she gets it done. If she doesn't do it hitting, she finds other ways to beat you. But this was truly a great match back and forth. These two teams have prepared all year to play each other for this tournament. So if you didn't see part of this, you really missed something special, because they both knew exactly what each other was going to do, and it was just a battle.
It was a 4-set win. It was a lot closer than that over in Norfolk. And the beauty of ESPN Plus is that you can actually go back and watch the matches in full on demand for free. And sometimes what I will do, and what I'll keep doing this week, is when I know a match ended, you can go to on demand on ESPN, watch it without knowing who won. That's how I watched your championship with USA. And you can go ahead and check Mick out in the full-on suit if you go watch that one back on Sunday, November 21st. Love that. Matthews finished with 21 kills. Very happy that that Paige Briggs is kind of getting a little bit more recognition. She didn't quite have the match that Western wanted her to have, only 9 kills on 33 swings. But either way, the setter for the Hilltoppers is back. She had that horrific injury against Kentucky, if you remember that one. So she is back. Nadia, I think her name is, continuing to roll through it. 2 more champions that we didn't talk about. Fairfield beat Ryder in 3 sets to represent the MAAC. And then Texas A&M Corpus Christi goes back-to-back in the Southland, beating McNeese State. Mick, we've got a few more here coming up this week. What you tell me what you're most excited about. Ready? I'm going to go through the conference tournaments that we have left. We've got the Mountain West, the Summit, the Missouri Valley, the MAC, where you've got Bowling Green, Ball State, Ohio, and then the Big East, where Creighton and Marquette are tied. Pick me 1 or 2 of those conference tournaments that it just has you fired up.
Well, I think the MAC is one I'm going to follow. Ball State has performed at a really high level all year. Bowling Green has set the standard in the MAC for several years now. Ball State getting after them last year and now taking charge this year. But Ohio has come back, new coach, turned that program around. He was there for Jeff Carlson, was at Ohio many years ago, had that program on top of the MAC. Now he's trying to do it again. I think the opposite side of the bracket from Ball State is really up in the air. But Ball State, if they finish, will go uncontested with an RPI even of 33 or 31, something very, very much high enough to get them into the tournament. So I like that tournament. I also want to see Creighton again and Marquette, because Creighton's beaten Marquette twice. Now they got to go do it again, and that's a hard one. So I think that's a big deal also.
All right, now let's get to the part that is going to be very very interesting. I don't really have a plan for how we're going to break this all down, but I put together a bit of a Joe Lunardi-esque bracketology that you're going to check out the link. If you go to the Twitter page, 6 Rotations, we'll put a photo up and try to keep it as lucid as possible right now for you to understand. But essentially there will be 32 at-large teams that make it with the 32 automatic bids. Teams like Wisconsin or Nebraska, it's hard to know if they're going to be an automatic or not. Kentucky, Washington or UCLA. In fact, Washington and UCLA on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, those two will be in action. UCLA against Cal, Washington against Colorado. That could be interesting, and maybe figure out who's going to be that automatic or that at-large. But if you are a fan of one of these 32 teams, really just the 10 bubble teams that I've projected to make it in the bubble, you don't want madness in some of these conference tournaments. I'm going to go through, Mick, and talk about my 22 locks. These 22 teams are locked into the NCAA tournament as an at-large with nothing to worry about. As long as they don't have horrendous collapses, they should be all but in. Teams like Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, Miami, Florida State, Baylor, Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State, UCLA or Washington, whoever doesn't win the conference, Washington State, Utah, Oregon, although they had a very tough weekend last weekend, losing to both the Washingtons, Stanford, Purdue, Penn State, whoever doesn't win between Nebraska, Wisconsin, Purdue, Minnesota, Ohio State, Illinois, Pepperdine, Marquette, and Rice. Those are the 22 locks on the bubble, the at-large locks. Now that leaves 10 spots, depending on whether teams like Ball State, UCF win or don't win their conference. Of course, if you're on the bubble, you want them to win the conferences. If not, or if a Big East team not named Creighton or Marquette wins it, that'll eliminate one more team. But Mick, let me know what you think about these 10 teams. And of course, there's going to be controversy. And of course, I want your opinions, fans. But with a week left and still some work to be done, these 6 teams are safe with strong finishes. That's what section I've got them in. And that's North Carolina, West Virginia, Texas Tech, who had a huge weekend sweep of West Virginia last weekend, Kansas State, who plays Kansas this weekend twice, and then Michigan and San Diego. So despite major losses, like Michigan against Illinois could be a big one, but should Michigan go 1-1 this weekend, they're probably good. San Diego will play BYU, which will rise their RPI. And those are our safe with strong finishes. What do you think about those 6?
Well, I think the fact that the Big 12 teams, and you mentioned Kansas and Texas Tech and West Virginia, there are 3 of them. Their RPIs are high enough to get in because they play Baylor and Texas twice. It's going to frustrate
some people because
it's going to really frustrate some people. Yes.
Kansas is 0-5 against top 25 teams and Kansas State is 0-6. So it's like, come on. And Notre Dame's right there at 1-8 against top 25 teams. But I see Notre Dame being on the outside looking in. Let me go through my last 4 in here. Go ahead.
But that's 4 Big 12 teams. That means they would get 6 teams in the tournament.
Yeah.
Because of Baylor and Texas. Shouldn't happen.
Frustrating.
Shouldn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is just a year, Mick, with not enough mid-majors getting at larges. And that's not Big 12's fault. It's the fact that the Big West went from a 3-bid conference to a 1-bid conference, right? Teams like that, conferences like that, the American used to maybe give you Cincinnati and UCF every season. Now it's looking like just UCF. A situation like that is going to arise, and see the Big Ten have 7. They usually have about 7 or 8. So it's not like a rarity in that regard. It's just the fact that, the RPI is what we depend on. Go ahead.
Same with the ACC though. We could say the same with the ACC. As much as we love Miami, you've got Florida State, here's Notre Dame, doesn't even have a 500 record. If they win 2 matches this weekend, they will be 500 and they'll have a 36 RPI. Now, how is that possible?
Well, they have to beat Louisville. So if they beat Louisville, give it to them. That's where I sit on Notre Dame. I'm just saying. That's where I sit on Notre Dame. I'm not as worried about teams like that. Now, I have Notre Dame as our first 4 out. Now, these are our last 4 teams in, and of course, so much to be dependent on here with the final weekend. But I've got South Carolina and Arkansas in. That's assuming that they split their series. If South Carolina sweeps the weekend over Arkansas, that probably bumps the Razorbacks out. I think the Gamecocks are safe with their high RPI. South Carolina is currently sitting at 39 in RPI. That's better than teams like Texas Tech, West Virginia, San Diego. So that's a situation where I've got both of them in our last 4 in. Kansas, should they win at least 1 against Kansas State, is in. I have them as one of my last 4 in. And then here's the other one. And I'll be honest with you, Mick, I'm projecting chaos. I think there will be one of these mid-major conferences that a team that we are not expecting is going to win it. Our first 4 out are Notre Dame, unless they beat Louisville, High Point, who has to just sit and wait, no more matches for High Point, and then Syracuse, who has a surprisingly solid RPI of 43. And lastly, Iowa State, who sits there, right on that bubble. 45 is the RPI, just ahead of Arkansas, just behind Syracuse. Those are the first 4 teams out. What are you thinking? Anything should be switched, or we like where we're at?
No, I think you're pretty close. In fact, but I'm surprised. I thought 47 in the RPI would be the cutoff, and you're down to 45 now. If there are some strange things that happen in these tournaments, that could go down to 42, 41.
Yeah.
Boy, you got some people sweating bullets right now.
And yeah, we can wrap this up by just reminding you, okay, there are conference tournaments like the MAC, where if you're a bubble team, you need chalk. You need it to happen. Same with the Big East. You need Creighton or Marquette to win the Big East tournament, and you kind of need Ball State to win the MAC. That's one of those things.
You need Ball State to win them. Now, take the MAC though. Let's say they get together behind the table and they say, "Wow, we could get 2 teams in this tournament if Bowling Green wins."
Now that's we don't want to talk about Illuminati stuff on here. So that's what we're excited for all week long. We are going to be as active. If you were following us on Twitter this weekend, you know I had a determination to be as locked in as possible for you. So we're going to keep that going this week. The MAC tournament continues today and tomorrow. Wednesday, tomorrow, the 24th, is the huge Pac-12 showdowns where we find out if UCLA and Washington will both stay tied for first before UCLA plays USC and Washington has a rivalry with Washington State. That's no gimme for Keegan Cook and company. And of course, all of the Big Ten mayhem and maybe the match of the season on Wednesday between Pittsburgh and Louisville. Mick, we've got a great slate of guests coming up next. So excited for you all to talk and hear from the 3 setters. We're going to start things down in Coral Gables, sunny South Beach, as we talk to Savannah Vach next. We begin our Around the Arenas segment today, our setter-specific episode with a Miami Hurricane, someone who's been making a lot of waves down there. Savannah Vach, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I got to jump into this because the Hurricanes have been kind of dormant in the national radar, at least your time there, for as long as I've been kind of following college volleyball the last 5 or 6 years. So what does this kind of rise of importance and potentially making the NCAA tournament mean to you specifically as a volleyball player and fan?
Obviously it means a lot because we've been working really, really hard to get where we've been this season. And the past couple seasons haven't been as good. So we're just super excited to see like what we're capable of doing this year. If the rest of our season goes as planned, hopefully we'll make the NCAA tournament and seeing like if we can, give a good battle to some really good teams. I think we're all really excited about that.
And then I don't know how many fans are too accustomed to what the Hurricanes have brewing down there. The only non-conference loss, a 5-setter against UCF, an NCAA tournament team. And then you took a set against Pittsburgh. So Savannah, kind of just walk us all through what the style of your offense and defense is, what kind of, coaching philosophies you kind of see across the sidelines.
So our program is pretty much a gold medal squared program. So we're very much focused on like numbers and like playing the percentages and playing what we know. And then offensively, we do a lot of game planning. Defensively, we do a lot of game planning depending on our opponents. But yeah, just we're a very tight-knit group. We value being good anyway, changing, toughness, and adapting to our surroundings. So just that's pretty much Miami volleyball for us.
And then lastly here, until I throw it over to Mick, this is going to air after your Florida State match, but clearly it's the big rivalry. I grew up in South Florida, so I know the Miami Florida State hatred and the football game that we won't talk too much about from a couple of days ago. How much does seeing Florida State on your schedule compared to even with Louisville, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech doing their things, does it fire you guys up a little bit extra because it's that Sunshine State showdown?
I mean, of course, like it's the biggest rivalry for us at least. And having that loss against football last week really is kind of like not putting pressure on us, but even fires us up even more. Like we have our chance against FSU now this week. So hopefully we can get the job done.
Go ahead, Mick.
Savannah, you're soft-spoken. So what voice do you use on the court?
Well, I try to still be calm and collected, but I definitely have more energy on the court than I do right now.
So you can bark if you need to, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
So what happens when you mangle a ball? Every setter mangles a ball every once in a while, right? And what kind of feedback do you appreciate from your hitters when that happens?
Me and my hitters, we definitely have a very honest relationship. So they know when I mess up, and I pretty much know when I mess up right away. So they're not really barking at me like, hey, said it better or anything like that, because I know already. But definitely not the nicest words going through my head about myself when I said it bad, but
no, you have to be nice to yourself. You have to good self-talk, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're taught. Well, one of the things that's always interesting is once the hitter believes in you, you can probably give her the worst set and she will go up there and kill it. And you'll run over there and she'll say, great set, when you knew it was a terrible set. How many times does that happen?
Yes, a lot. It happens a lot for sure.
And that's all confidence in you, right? The hitter believes in you and you've developed that confidence with her. So that's always the most astonishing thing to me as a setter when I was playing and I would make one of these horrendous sets. I'd trap them or something and they'd go up and crush it. And they'd say, great set. And I would say, if that's a great set, I don't want to ever set one there again, because yeah. So you, as just with young players listening here, what would happen? How would you handle if a hitter started to maybe complain or keep saying a little higher or a little more off or something like that? How do you handle that as a setter? That happens every once in a while, especially in tight situations.
I mean, I think just like focusing on you and doing what there's a lot of times where we go back and watch film after a game where maybe a hitter said, hey, that was too low. And then we'll go back and watch it and it was right on the money with our tempo. And they'll be like, oh, my bad, after the fact. So I think just taking the feedback and, maybe swallowing a little bit of your pride at the moment if they're being too tough on you, but just putting up a good ball the next time. And then hopefully they can get a good connection after that.
Well, you certainly earned the trust of your teammates, not only with your setting, but there's been a time or two that they put you in to just let you swing also in the front row, and you've done quite well. So they can't complain too much with an arm like that. You're doing it at both ends here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Back to you, Daniel.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to kind of get into the mind space of what Miami Hurricane volleyball is about. You told me right before we started recording, you guys are all kind of like best friends. Are there any instances on road trips or have there been any wacky moments where you guys have had to kind of stick together and bond a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. So earlier in the season, we played Duke and the plan was to like take a charter plane home from Duke after we played them. And I think it was the weather or something in Miami, the charter plane never took off from here. So it never came to come get us. And we were stuck at the gym at Duke for probably close to like 4 or 5 hours before someone was like, hey, we found a hotel that you guys can stay at. And Duke was really nice. They gave us a hotel on campus that we could go to. But we ended up all getting like our own rooms and it was super nice. And then the next morning, we ate this really nice brunch, like on a golf course. It was ridiculous. It was a whole mess. But I think like seeing our team interact and like not be like bummed that we couldn't go home, like just take it as like, oh, we get to stay in a hotel extra night and have fun together. Like that was such a cool experience for our team this year. And then last week, it was one of our coaches, her name's Jill's birthday. So we had practice scheduled for that day, but she decided like, hey, instead of practice today, we're going to go to the pool and swim. So we got to have like a pool day and that was super fun. So obviously playing volleyball is always going to be fun, but spending time with your team, I think, is also one of the best parts of college volleyball.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the Midwest and the North watching that are like, ask her about how often they go to the beach and what it's like to live in South Florida. And that's your answer right there. They just get to take a day off and hit the pool. Last question here for you, Savannah. You grew up in a volleyball family. Your mom played college volleyball. Your older sister played college volleyball. Was it something that was on TV a lot when you were growing up? And do you still kind of watch a lot of it?
Yeah, for sure. My sister played her first year at Harvard. And so we watched a lot of college volleyball because of that. But even growing up, like I knew a bunch of girls from my club that had gone to college and were playing. So it was always on the TV and like we were always watching a bunch of different teams play.
And, in my opinion, Miami should be in that top 25, but let's limit it down. I want to hear your top 4 as it stands. Only a week and a half left in the season.
Yeah, so I would probably say definitely Louisville is number one. They're undefeated. They're doing great. Texas, I think I put number two. And then it's a toss-up between a bunch of different teams at that point. I think Pittsburgh is a really good option. I know Georgia Tech has been one of the only teams that has been able to beat them. There's a couple teams in other conferences that have been going back and forth. So maybe someone else from out there, but I really don't know. It's hard to pick. I like Wisconsin a lot. I love Sydney Haley. I think she's a great player. So, there's just a lot of movement going on right now. I really don't know the fourth pick.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you watch a lot of ACC, so there's a little bit of a preference there, but I'm not going to disagree with you. And I was going to ask who your role model of sorts, kind of watching in the last couple of years, has been, and Sydney Hilly is a phenomenal one. Savannah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, guys.
She's Savannah Vach out of the University of Miami. We're going to head across the country out to UCLA with Shelby Martin next. Winging from one coast to the other, here we are out in LA with Shelby Martin, the setter for UCLA. Shelby, things have been moving pretty smoothly for your Bruins this year. How have things been? It's your first semester with UCLA, transferring over from Kansas State. I'm sure it's a bit of a culture shock now.
Yeah, it definitely is. LA is a lot bigger than Manhattan, Kansas. I'll tell you that much.
And as we take a look at, the Pac-12 picture in the episode that Mick and I did last week, we really got to dissect and open eyes that it's been so long since UCLA has won the Pac-12. I think it was the Pac-10 when they last did it in '99. How much conversation with Coach Seeley, with your players, have you guys kind of had about, like, all right, we're locking in, we're 4 games away. It's really in the front view mirror for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's been such an amazing season. We have done so well. I really think Seeley he just wants to keep our eyes on the next game. We're super close to the Pac-12 championship, so of course that's exciting for any team to be in the running for it, but we don't have a hold of it yet, and there's still 2 more weeks of conference to play. So, we're just trying to take one game at a time.
Now, the Pac-12 has been this hodgepodge, right? Where there hasn't been one dominant team like in a different conference, like in the ACC with Louisville or Wisconsin the last few years in the Big Ten. When you go about playing Oregon State and then you have Oregon, what's the conversation between, like, I guess the veteran leaders on the team to try to not look ahead? You guys took care of Oregon State and then you have to play Oregon, something like that, where you can't quite look ahead because every team can beat anyone.
I mean, listen, this is the Pac-12. Every team can get you on any given night. So I think what we really just try to focus on is taking even not necessarily one game, but just one set at a time. Like, just get it done, play our best, play how we know how to play, and don't focus too much on the future and just focus on right now.
Well, it sure helps to have a player like Mac May to set to. And Mick's been talking about Mac May all season long. I know Mick's got some questions. As a setter to a setter, Mick, I'm sure you're astonished at how you don't set Mac May right 100 times a match.
Well, I'm not astonished at that, because I would probably do that just to set the record straight. But setting and this, Shelby, setting certain hitters, you have to set them different ways. So to kind of guarantee a kill for Mac, you just don't throw it up there. I mean, she does a lot of work on her own, but if you want to get in her sweet spot, where do you have to put the ball?
I think for Mac May, I mean, she's great. She can really do anything with any ball that I give her, but to make her the most successful, I've just kind of realized you just have to keep it high and quick and honestly kind of tighter, because when she gets up there and she's high over the block, she can do whatever she wants with it. She can chisel, she can swing it straight down. She can hit the hard cross, like inside the 10-foot line. So I really think the key to keeping her successful, which keeps the team successful, is just keeping it high, quick, and tighter to the net.
So which of the middles is toughest to set? You've got, I've seen the foreign kid, the Romanian or Hungarian. Yeah. Romanian. Yeah. She gets a good swing sometimes, but do you have to set them differently?
Yeah. So if you're comparing Francesca and Anna is a much more dynamic hitter. So she is kind of like Mac May in a sense, to where if you can just honestly just chunk the ball up there, and it gets so high over the net, she can see wherever she wants to hit. But Francesca is very, very fast. So her window is a little bit smaller, and I've found success with Francesca if I just give it to her quickly, just right there, and she can just swing it as hard as she can before the block even gets up.
So how many times has Coach Seeley told you that he was the setter?
Every day. Never lets me forget.
I'll bet that's right. I watched him. The first time I saw him was at USA tryouts in 1997, I believe. And I was the women's national team coach, and Doug Beal put him through a workout. You'll have to ask him about it because he had him doing screw under sets on the floor. And, you know, Seeley's 6'6", 6'7", something like that. And he was just beating him up. You'll have to ask him if he remembers that time.
I'll do that.
What are a couple like quirky things, right? We've heard about the legends of Coach Seeley, and you know that he does things that are a little unorthodox. Walk me through a couple of the fun things to keep things loose around practice.
So actually today we were getting reps, and he just lowered the basketball goal in our practice gym and just started repping out some pull-ups. Like, I just turned around and he's getting a workout in.
Now, I mean, you start your career at ECU out on the East Coast. You go halfway to California and you stop in Kansas. You spend the spring season there, second team all conference. How long did it take for you to get into the rhythm of playing with UCLA? I mean, you dropped the first set of the season against UC Davis, and then you guys have that monster win against Georgia Tech the second weekend.
Yeah, I think it was just the process. And I know every setter goes through this of learning who your hitters are and learning what makes them successful. And the further we get through conference and the more practices we have, we're just clicking more and more. And I think it was a reality check, dropping that first set to UC Davis. It kind of put things in perspective. Like, even though we wear the title UCLA, you know, we still have to go out and earn every single set and every single game. So I really think it was a good thing for us to kind of get that reality check and realize, you know, like, we still have to play our hardest. Like, no one's going to give it to us just because we are UCLA. And
then here, Shelby, go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, Shelby, you remember the scores of the second and third games of that Davis match?
It was tight. It was
2 points each.
I would, you know what, that's got a great, I want to ask this question because, you know, you talk so much about like quarterbacks in football and their memory, and they know exactly what happened at what play, like 23-22 in the second set. Are those things that you kind of remember throughout a season, or are you on to the next one and only watching film in terms of like preparing to get better?
You know, I'm going to be honest. I don't think anyone really remembers the Davis game. You just kind of threw it away.
Over the shoulder and gone.
Next game.
The Davis coach remembers it.
Oh, yeah. And they should. They played great.
No doubt about it. And then lastly here, you know, we talked to Savannah, and the picture is getting a lot clearer on who's going to be in the tournament. There's a couple bubble teams, and then obviously the auto bids from our power conferences. It means something for the school, but in terms of seeding and everything, UCLA is going to be in the tournament. So that's not something we have to worry too much about at this time. But Shelby, walk me through, if you watch a lot of volleyball, what are some of the storylines that have really grabbed you in this season late in the year? I mean, there's been a lot of wildness that Nick and I have been able to go over.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just think it's so exciting to see how everybody is kind of essentially just beating up on everybody else. I mean, like, you look at the Big Ten, like, I think the first place, there's not even, I think they're all tied, aren't they? There's
you've got like Wisconsin, Nebraska are tied, and then Purdue and Penn State are tied, and then Ohio State and Minnesota. It's all within 2 games of each other. It's great.
And they've all, I think, all total, but lost like 4, 5, 6 games.
Right.
I mean, that's just kind of unheard of. And so I think it's great to know that we have so much talent in the volleyball world this year, and you can really take a game off anyone. Like, there's no clear, like, oh, this team's going to go all the way. Like, right. It's clear in doubt that team. No, anyone can take it.
Well, I mean, even just a week ago, we were talking about UCLA being in contention for a top 4 seed. Now that loss to Oregon, and without having any like top tier talent left in terms of national picture, who do you see as that the 3 and the 4 there if it was up to you?
If it were up to me, I think I think obviously Wisconsin. I think I wouldn't count us out yet. I mean,
Okay.
I know we had some drops here and there, but like that game's gone. So, I would say that we're up in the top 5. I think BYU's had a great year. I think in terms of like top 3 or 4, I would also say even a Georgia Tech, like they're a great team.
No doubt about it. Pittsburgh, obviously right up there in that like 3 spot. It's something where going to the NCAA tournament for you has to feel like pinch myself kind of stuff, right? The fact that we're even talking about being a national seed, being a hosting those first 2 rounds in UCLA, the last few years, who was 1 or 2 setters that you really watched in that tournament and were like, I want to be in that spot right now?
I think we all can agree Sydney Hilly, she's great. I love her style. I love the way she plays, how she run the offense. I also love LMA Powell. I think she has a great style of setting, and she can just get that Washington offense going, and it's almost unstoppable. So
it's tough. It's tough because you kind of have to root against LMA a little bit here down the stretch.
I mean, she's great.
UCLA, Washington tied with 4 games to go. Thank you so much for joining us, Shelby.
Thank you so much.
We're going to move on to the middle, back to Kentucky, talk to the freshman for the Wildcats, Emma Grome, next. We're going to wrap up this setter-centric episode with the freshman phenom out in Lexington, Emma Grome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So we talked a little bit before we recorded, and you've got so much composure, and there's no, surprise why Coach Skinner has been talking so highly of you. But when you first got to Lexington, and I don't know, did you know that Madison wasn't going to come back and that you were going to be propelled into it? Or is it a little bit of a competitiveness that you wanted that role more than anything else?
I definitely wanted the role. I'd say earlier in the summer, I found out that she was not going to come back. And, that was just, I was focusing on being my best self and using that summer to really get as good as I could be and focus on reps and, be ready to step into that role.
Were there 1 or 2 players that you synchronized with the most in the offseason that you were able to kind of feel comfortable, or did you kind of get thrown into things as that freshman and have to work it out in the beginning of the preseason?
I'd say I kind of felt like a good connection with everyone a little bit, but, it takes a little bit of time to get that connection, especially coming in as a freshman. There's a bunch of hitters you haven't set before, but one of the best things about this team was that everyone loves to get in the gym. So we used the summer as a great time to come in whenever we could to get those reps, to form those connections. And that really helped us going into the season.
And then before I throw it over to Mick, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. And that's the fact that Kentucky might have had like this weird moment where you're coming off of a national championship, but all of us, right, all the talking heads around it, I'm sure it's impossible to blare it out with Kentucky media. You're saying, how can they replace, Lily and Curry and the other Skinner? What was the, I guess, mentality halfway through the year when you started to realize, we're doing it, right? We're exceeding expectations. We're still first in the SEC, and all of that was going on.
Well, I'd say from the beginning, we obviously knew that there was a lot of shoes to fill, but that was a lot of motivation to do our best and keep, getting after it. And I think as the season went on and as it's still going on, we're getting a little bit better every day. And that's really firing us up and helping us get ready for the tournament and the SEC championship. And it's just been a great time.
Emma, I've watched you closely right from the start. You're fearless. How does that, how do you do that as a freshman? How do you walk in and trust yourself so much? I mean, you probably are faking it a little bit, right? But you really, I've watched a ton of your matches and you just perform and you don't seem to have any doubt. How do you get to that point so quickly?
Thank you. I'd say it definitely has a lot to do with our teammates and our coaches. The people here are incredible and super supportive. And that was one thing coming in as a freshman that was super helpful, was the upperclassmen. They really were taking us under their wing and showing us the ropes, and that, I don't know, you get more confidence as you go on, knowing that your teammates are there and have your back and you're all in it together.
So who's the easiest to set?
Easiest to set? I don't know. I mean, you have great hitters everywhere. It kind of makes it fun for me as a setter, as I know that I have a good option no matter what spot I go to.
Come on, Mick. She's got to go back to the locker room and talk to her players after this,
Yeah, she could just throw it up there. I mean, they hit it. Usually I ask you who's the toughest to set, but the easiest to set is somebody that can make a bad set good and always tells you great set.
I mean, that's the great part about playing at this program is everyone does that. Everyone can, make a bad set into something good.
So you have no fear out there. You just go for it every night.
I do my best, try to stay focused and calm in each point. Definitely some times where it gets a little tough, but
I like your personality. You'd be great to play with. Yeah, you could deliver. All of us that are setters, we have a little setter's card that we keep in our back pocket. Do you have yours available?
I don't.
Well, you just pretend it's there then, because we all stick together.
It's all up here.
That's right.
Mick's so happy we got this setter episode here. And, I want to talk to you about a couple specific things, though, right? With the Final Four in Columbus, and you're a Cincinnati girl, what does the sport specifically bring to the table in Ohio? Because as an undersized setter, right, 5'9", I'm sure you had to utilize other avenues when you were starting to play high school club ball. Why does Ohio breed such phenomenal volleyball?
I don't know. There's just so many good clubs around, a lot of good players. Everyone's pushing each other. There's a lot of competition. So you just have to use that competition to fire yourself up and keep getting better in any way you can.
Is there a separate avenue of grit or a certain amount of determination that maybe being in the heartland, because when we talk to Indiana people, Ohio people, Michigan, that area of the country, it seems like they just play a little harder than maybe, other areas of the country.
I mean, it still comes back to the competition, when you have a lot of competition around you, it makes it all that more important to play with grit and play your best at every moment.
A little extra blue collar there. All right. And we got the big blue one, right? Blue and white versus blue and orange this weekend.
Yes.
The premier weekend for SEC volleyball, but it's your first time playing Florida. So aside from watching film, what has your Florida experience been like since you've gotten there? Maybe beforehand, did you start to kind of learn a little bit about the Gators and Kentucky rivalry?
I've always kind of known about it. Yeah, I went to a lot of games when I was in the recruiting process and after I committed. So I've been there for the past couple years at the Florida UK game, the one that was at UK last time. So the environment is insane at those games. And that just makes it so much more fun. And especially this weekend, being at home, we'll have a big crowd and that just fires us up even more.
Yeah, it's usually like a 5-set thriller. I think both matches last season, in fact, went the distance, if not just one of them. But last question for you. You told us you were a volleyball junkie. So one thing we like to ask all the players that we have on is to kind of break down, if you were the bracketologist here leading into the final week of the season, who are some teams that you think deserve that first four or maybe somewhere in that top 6 seeds?
Oh boy. I mean, there's just so much good volleyball everywhere this year. It's going to be tough, but that's tough. I'd say Purdue has been doing really good. That's one person that I've noticed that they've been doing well. So maybe they should be considered, but I don't know. It's going to be tough.
Who are the other setters that she looks to kind of model herself after and pick up little things? Who do you steal from?
A little bit from everyone, I'd say. I mean, there's good setters in our conference and, obviously the top seeds, there's good setters everywhere. And Madison Lilly, I look a lot to her because she, I'm following in her footsteps. There's a lot I can learn there. She was a great setter and a great leader, and I try to do my best to learn what I can.
Are there any names, though, of current setters that you played against that you really, really thought were pretty good and you enjoyed the competition?
Oh boy.
I know I'm putting you on the spot, but you can name teams even if you don't know names.
Yeah. I mean, we played Louisville, Wisconsin. I mean, they're all great setters.
Yeah.
Everyone you can learn a little bit from everywhere.
See, I kind of like this, Daniel. She's not worried about the opponent. She's just worried about where she's going.
I was about to say she's a freshman, right? She's still trying to figure out what to say and what not to say on these.
I think she's got it. Fair. She's right on here.
Phenomenal. Emma, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Way to go, Emma.
Exactly. That'll wrap up this episode. For Mick and Emma, I'm Daniel. Thank you so much for watching Six Rotations.